Hi, Falguni. Falguni, the Nykaa story is folklore today. The success that you've had, everyone is talking about it as the ultimate IPO story of the last year in the country. However, privately, many VCs will admit that they were almost blindsided and it was perhaps India's best kept secret. Please tell us, how did you manage to build such an iconic company with so little capital? From what I understand, you probably took in less than $75 million before your IPO and with very little hype.
Yeah, thanks, Deep. You are right about that. I think it began as wanting to be an inventory-led e-commerce company. And what that meant was that I had to raise money from domestic high net worth individuals because I couldn't accept foreign investment at that point. And I think also because I forget to mention, but for me, it was a second career. So I had some amount of savings. And as a result, I was very clear that I will not raise money till such time as I have proof of concept. So I waited for about 2.5 years till all the assumptions fell into place so that I didn't have to defend them too much. I could see, look, you can see that in my numbers, you know. So I waited for 2.5 years and then I raised money from high net worth individuals. And I remember those days when I raised very little money from and I diluted very little. And I always raise equity, so I always announce what percentage dilution it was. And a lot of journalists were like, "Oh, only so much." Like they were not excited about it. They didn't want to write about it. But to me, it was like I wanted a fair valuation. I didn't want I just did not want to have to go wide and give all kinds of rights. And I was almost doing a kind of deal where there were not too many rights because it was you need to bet on the company and its strategy. So very different mindset and thinking, and we were happy as far as we got the capital we needed.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think lots of lessons for our young entrepreneurs out there. Although I guess every business is different, but we'll come back to that point also, like how much should one raise at what point of time. But I wanted to just get a few things about the story out. Also, you launched Nykaa at a fairly late stage of your career, like you already alluded to it. It was your second kind of stint. Do you think, in hindsight, this was good planning, or was this providential? And what are the merits of starting late rather than early? Everyone talks about start early. If you're doing a startup, if you're becoming an entrepreneur, start very early. I, by the way, think there's a midpoint, but I'd love to hear your point of view. What are the merits of starting late? Was it a planned move, etc.?
See, personally, I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, start early, you have a long inning ahead. For me, I think we are all, as human beings, we are creatures of our mindset and the constraints we put in our mind. So one of the constraints I put in my mind is that entrepreneurship needs too much commitment. And while I was a mother of young kids, I could not give time and commitment. So I waited till my kids went away to college. I happen to have twins, so they both went away to college together. And suddenly that emptiness syndrome came in, and I felt, oh, I have so much more time and energy, and what do I do? So I kept myself busy for 1 year building a holiday home in Alibag, and soon realized that was not for me. So I was really itching to do more. And as I was itching to do more, I thought about leaving Kotak for almost 3 years before I actually implemented it. So it's not easy to leave a well-established career. And but I have to admit that all my learnings, years of learnings as a professional, came in to help me build a right company, so to speak. So I think I think whatever be the path, it has its own advantages, disadvantages, and it all falls into place. So I think, whenever it's fate. I do believe that it's, fate, and it'll happen when it has to happen.
Thank you. That's a wonderful lesson there, which is that at least what I'm drawing out of that is that it's never too late. Firstly, I think it's to do with phase and stage of life. And like you could have either done it earlier or it's almost binary, but then you were at a point of time at your career where you were right at the top. I know that you were, one of the top guns at Kotak iBanking. Last time you and I chatted on a similar kind of show, you were telling me that you actually took Kiran Majumdar Shaw and Biocon public as a banker. And I said, wow, that's like phenomenal. And now you're doing your own thing. However, for the young lady entrepreneurs out there, I think there could be other points of time as well. And even for the guys, there could be other points of time where you feel, hey, I've done very well in this career. Now I have a very clear plan, a road ahead, and I can think of various things to do. And would I be right in saying that commit to at least 4, 5, 6 years in your mind, saying no matter what happens, I have enough gas in the tank to go in for 4, 5 years. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, of course. That was very much on my mind. The
Yeah.
only thing I said is that I must become an entrepreneur before I turn 50, because I knew that for these things to go to the finishing line, you need 8 to 10 years. And mentally in my mind, I would have energy at least for next 10 years or so. Hopefully now, now as they say, 60s is new 40s. So maybe one has energy for longer. But, at that point, I was quite clear that anything you start, you have to commit yourself for 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that's one of the key lessons for everyone. Falguni, in one of your recent interviews, I picked up that you spoke about how there's actually not too much of difference between tier 1 and tier 2 towns in India, or tier 1 and tier 2 cities in India. And that really got me thinking. So would love to understand how you're building for one India, and what are the lessons for other categories as well? Does this hold true for other categories too?
So we say this, me and Anchit and Aditya also say this, we say it out of our information and knowledge and data that we see on our website, because we have a fairly widespread business, which is equally spread out across tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, And what we find is that the customers are buying pretty much the same thing. If I list top 10 brand, the order moves like 1 degree here and there. Some one brand is a little bit higher ranking on tier 1 versus tier 3. I personally feel that even tier 1 cities, metropolitan cities, our consumption is very much affected by income levels, and tier 1 cities is comprised of many pockets of high income and lower income. And to my surprise, increasingly I've been hearing that many smaller cities in India have purchasing powers that is very varied. There are all income levels in every city. So just because it's a tier 3 city from a geographic perspective does not mean that it doesn't have a composition of different income level consumption. So I think our observation has been that India pursued, like we've all been, like I was a consultant in India from very early days, and India pursued this policy of geographic diversification. They started giving incentives for various industries to relocate in more remote areas. And as a result, through length and breadth of the country, you find that there are all income classes. It's not so underdeveloped and in terms of economic reality, it's not so underdeveloped everywhere. I mean, there could be really some pockets like that, but across the breadth and length of India, there is a lot of forward thinking. There is a lot of income levels, and there's all kind of consumption classes. Even middle class is becoming quite strong in all parts of the country. So I think India has emerged to be a much stronger country from a geographical strength perspective. The prosperity of India is flowing through the rest of the country.
Okay, very interesting. So pockets of prosperity everywhere. And would it also be fair to say that tier 2, tier 3 India is even more aspirational? So when it comes to the kind of products that you sell at Nykaa, which is lifestyle, beauty, etc., there's perhaps an even more reason to turn towards particularly the internet, because you don't have that kind of availability that the big metros and the big cities have in their stores. Is that another factor that you saw?
Yeah, partly maybe true, partly true. That also an aspiration also. What has happened is, but I have to say that even the knowledge in every part of the country is very high. I think across the board, there is a lot of exposure to social media. There's a lot of exposure to media itself. There's a lot of exposure to global phenomenons. So with you take any phenomenon, like even if you talk about clean beauty or you talk about natural beauty, none of that is only urban only phenomenon. You will find acceptance throughout the country.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Okay. I guess this question has to be asked, but it's the kind of question where I think you could probably take 1 minute to answer or 1 hour. So maybe you'll get a few minutes. But really, if you were to start Nykaa today, great 9 year story. It's been just phenomenal run up, an IPO which was, I guess, 81 times oversubscribed. Just fantastic stats, and most importantly, been profitable most of the time. A really solid business. And I'm not saying this, but I've heard this from 3 very close VC friends of mine who feel it's one of the most solid, one of the most real businesses in the country. Makes me very proud as a junior alum of yours that you built it. But what would you do differently, if at all, anything, Falguni, in these 9 years?
So I think, Deep, I think I've said this before, that if I were to start again, I would definitely have a tech person as a co-founder. It would have really saved me a lot of early stage hassle, as well as allowed further acceleration in our growth in the early years for sure. So I think if something did slow us down, was clearly our tech capabilities in the initial years. I think we were a late bloomer from a tech capability perspective. I think it all started flowing into place in year 4 of our journey. I lost for first 3 CTOs, one after another. Like after every year, at the end of a year, CTO was leaving. So I saw that 3 times over, and I got settled only after that. So yeah, I would definitely think that I would do differently. I think in spite of, I think as a banker, long-term finance person, I had a lot of strength in legal, compliance, regulatory, or even for that matter, finance or fundraise, or many of those things, even business relationships, because for my whole career was spent on those.
Right.
But digital marketing, technology and digital marketing was the other part which I was not experienced on, and including marketing. But somehow the digital marketing and marketing, we got it very right from early days, and our success also comes from doing that right. So what I would have done differently is definitely technology.
Yeah, it's ironical, and I was smiling because, by the way, one of the few things I say I would have done differently is not been probably naive or foolish enough to start alone, gone with one co-founder, so team of 2 with complementary skills. And given that I'm not a techie, it would have been fantastic to have a techie. So I guess there are many things in common, but I couldn't help but smile when I learned that. And by the way, we ran through about 6 CTOs in about 4 or 5 years, till knock on wood, we finally had someone now who's with us for 7 years and doing a great job. So I guess a lot of similarities out there.
Yeah.
Okay, coming to entrepreneurship per se, I want to start by really addressing the elephant in the ecosystem. And it's something which we really think a lot about at TiE. TiE is all about entrepreneurship, and we really scratch our head each time we are planning a conference or having a brainstorm or a board meeting. Why are there so few women entrepreneurs in India? What is it that we are lacking? And how do we proactively attempt to change this, rather than just sit back and wait for yet another Nykaa to hit the ball out of the park? It's great you've done this. It's phenomenal. It's going to be amazing for many women out there. They're going to be very inspired. Also, because you've done it in a line which people can, I think, relate to, at least women can relate to completely. But there's some problem we have in the Indian ecosystem, that we just don't have enough Indian founders. And I'm sure you've thought about it. Would love to get your thoughts.
But I think this is a global problem. I don't think it's only India-centric problem.
Okay.
When I meet people globally, whether it is, I don't know about the US, but whether it's in Europe or whether it is in many countries, they always admire what we have in India. Like in banking, there were a lot of senior women bankers, you are aware of that. Yeah. And I think they used to, in my early days in banking, they used to say, what has India done differently that there are so many of the women bankers,
Yeah.
And I think it is only a matter of time before there are a lot more tech entrepreneurs also. I think very often these things are ingrained in very early days. I think there is a lot of research on this, that even in the US, there is research which says that let us teach our girls to play with Lego and other toys rather than Barbie dolls, so to speak. So there's a lot of research on that. And I think it needs generation to change. Like, I think both me and my daughter could have been easily into any engineering colleges, but I chose commerce, she chose liberal arts, just out of habit. Most girls do that. I mean, it was, and with very liberal parents who would have probably said, I said to my daughter that you should go to MIT, and she chose to go to Yale for liberal arts. And then she realized she wanted to do math, and she did applied math. And I was also very strong at math, and there is no way I would not have done well at IIT, but I didn't even consider it. Like, it was just like, okay, I'll be doing finance. So I think these are conditional through generations. And I want to repeat that this is with very liberal parents who would have totally supported, the equal treatment. Like I say that my success is because my dad treated me as an equal, but still because of generational thing, this happens. So it is changing. It changes slowly. And I think this is, I can see a lot of upcoming women entrepreneurs, and we won't need to have this conversation in future, I'm sure.
Wow, really, I can't wait for that day. I think it really has to change. Also, it has to change because in consumer businesses, if we really don't have someone at the top who understands 50% of the audience innately, and in, not only in your kind of business, even my kind of business. By the way, in travel, most leisure travel decision making is very often done by the woman at the house. The actual buying and the purchasing online might happen by the man. So that's been proven too. And yet, we see this, and I think sometimes it's the perception of startup which is deterring people. People believe that startup for the first many years there's no work-life balance. Could be, and I think at least we saw that in our early days. When then we learned, after some time you realize you get into a cadence. Also, you can't burn out all the time, but I think as that changes and it's more about working smart, and I actually feel the pandemic might have taught us a lesson out there as well. That listen, we were grinding all of these hours, we were leaving home early, coming home really late, doing this. But guess what? You could be very productive, sitting at home for maybe half the week and getting a lot of cycles out there. So I think you wanted to say something to that.
No, I think recently we were talking about this, that, the way the shift system is so very well done in hotels, or even for that matter in stores. One can arrive at a shift system to have somebody take, I mean, I'm not talking about the entrepreneurship and the leadership at the top, but elsewhere, you can have a better support system in many other functions, so that women don't have to feel so burnt out.
Right, right. No, true. Falguni, as in all entrepreneurial journeys, or at least most entrepreneurial journeys, I think you would have also encountered some tough times. I think almost every entrepreneur will talk about, the scars from the battles, etc., and some really low moments. What kept you going through these difficult times, and how do you personally deal with disappointment? Because there are always ups and downs. So, do you have your own formula for that?
Yeah, so I saw that during early career, actually. And since a lot of questions have been asked to me, I've had a chance to ponder deeper into my style. So I realized the concluding thoughts are that I'm an adventurer at heart. I seek adventure, I
Right.
seek new experiences. And honestly, like, I'll be the weakest swimmer and I'll jump into the sea just to go and see the new fish. So
Wow.
I'm quite foolish that way. I don't see the risk at all. So when a lot of people ask me what about the risk, I really don't see it. And for me, what excites me is the new experience and what it means. And most of the time, I also feel that, very rarely, but if I feel that I've come to a roadblock, and usually my poses, I'll be sitting with holding my head and just looking down, and I feel that the universe is there to help you. And I'm a big believer in, I feel that, there are coincidences that happen, and you come across certain answers that you were really looking for. And I think in my early journey at Nykaa, and many times it has happened, you come across, because you're looking for certain answers, you come across certain books, certain passage, certain conversation, which actually gives you that answer. So I personally am a big believer that, I think, with patience and with belief, and positive belief, that things will be moving forward, and there's no connivance to hold you back. I think I'm an optimist, actually, if you can say. So I really
Yeah.
don't feel the pressure. I don't see a pessimistic view at all. So yeah, I just feel that I get down to work. I roll up the sleeve and get down to work when I feel hard times, when I see hard times.
How lovely, and a very, I think, a very calming thing what you said. And it's almost like that whole the whole karma theory, in which is about go ahead and do something. If you want to make that change, don't just sit and mope. But were there moments where you actually contemplated, early days or otherwise, that listen, not working out, well tried, done, but time to pack up? Did that even happen
No,
to you?
that I never think like that. So of course there were many moments. So I think we got pretty early success. Like, we started getting 10 orders a day very immediately, and then we got about 60 orders a day. But when I asked some friends, they would be like, "Yeah, you should be doing more by now. You should be doing at least 100 orders a day." And there are all these short periods where you feel stuck. You feel stuck at that point. And things are not going as per plan. And whether it is in our operations, and whether it is implementing ERP, or whether it was on the marketing side, I found that, I did not have to feel that, oh, nothing will change. I think most of the time, like I told you, I actually roll up the sleeve and I go deeper into, I'm very data led. So I go deeper into data. I try to understand the problem. And most of the time, the solution comes to me. And this happens, in many ways. Most recently, it happened during the COVID, when COVID hit us in April of that year. We were staring at a loss of 42.5 crores when Nykaa as a company had never had more than 25, 26 crore loss in a full year. And in 1 month, we were down 42.5 crores.
Wow.
But instead of panicking and letting go of employees, because I felt that COVID had a large human price to pay. And I can't complicate it by asking people to leave. See, when you don't have performance, I'm a believer, you must cut down. That's not an issue. If you don't have performance, let people go. But if it is COVID, I didn't want to let people go in that scenario. So I just started thinking and I said, okay, I will take my call, and marketing cost is considered variable. I'll cut down on marketing costs and we'll see what happens. And to our surprise, we brought down our marketing cost to 5.6% of our revenues, which was odd. It was half of what we were in the previous year. And we brought it back again because obviously we want to invest for the future. But we survived, and we made up our losses in the year by cutting down on our marketing costs. Also, many other ideas like that came to us, that we could, we became essential only store, we pivoted, we brought in personalization to show the right store and right pin code. Our tech team we started doing daily calls with our tech and our business teams and coming up with solutions. So very agile approach. So most of the time when adversity hits us, we are always rolling up our sleeves and doing more.
That's brilliant, just brilliant. And I have to call that out and emphasize that for the audience, especially, younger entrepreneurs. There are going to be crises like the pandemic. There are going to be many more. But if you take that approach, what Falguni spoke about, that listen, what can I do about this? Stick to, first principles, break down the problem, and then address the key areas. Where is that problem? So, you can't grow revenue in such a time. You can't do too much about it. Marketing more would be foolish. But can you actually cut back there, but also look at other areas on how to variabilize cost? And I think there's a really great kind of plan of action you've given us on how to tackle this. Okay, now I'm going to give you a cheesy warning alert up front. But since I coined this phrase for my question, I have to say it. Luckily, it didn't become the topic. I actually wanted it to become the topic of our discussion, or the title, but it was shot down by the rest of the Thai folks very quickly. But here goes. From the head of investment banking, being a head honcho at Kotak, to becoming the Nykaa of the Indian startup ecosystem. That's the cheesy one. You've clearly come a long way, Falguni. Looking back, what is the advice that you would give your younger self while starting out either your entrepreneurial journey or even starting out your career? And really what I'm trying to say, obviously, is, and in your case, you even have your very well qualified daughter working with you now. But what about those youngsters, guys and girls, coming out early in their career, soon after that, thinking about entrepreneurship? What are the few things that you would like to tell them?
So yeah, entrepreneurship or even working women, it's a similar message I have. So what I would say is, and I've really thought hard about it because people have asked me this question, that what was it so different? So I was clearly brought up in a home where my dad made me believe that, both mom and dad made me believe that I was equal to a son, and I never assumed any mindset or barriers in my mind. And then from there on, I went on to be at IIM Ahmedabad, where we were a group of 9 girls in a class of 160. And obviously, I found Sanjay at IIM, and we got married. So obviously, he came with respect for my working, and he always treated me as as a professional. He saw my perspective on my work as a professional's perspective on work, and he never wanted to come in the way of, oh, you can't do this, we have a responsibility, or none of that ever came in the way of what I wanted to do from a career perspective. So all the career choices were mine. So when I thought about it, and during early days and with Nykaas success, a lot of I used to go and connect with my customers, women all across the country in smaller towns. I used to make it a point to go to smaller towns, and we used to hold what we call as beauty bar, where our women customers would come and I would interact with them. And, and somewhere there I started giving my message that, look, you need to be the star of your lives, and the spotlight of your life should be on you. And it became my message to women that, you need to be the principal actor in your life, and the spotlight of the life should be on you. And for too long, women were too afraid to unsettle the apple cart by asking more for themselves, or they have a right to dream, and women were too afraid to dream for themselves because they thought they will upset the balance at home. And I feel it is their freedom to do that. They must dream for themselves, and they must be given freedom to pursue their dream. And this message really related, a lot of our customers were millennials, and they related a lot to this message because for too long they'd seen their mothers compromise their careers and their ambition and their dreams for sake of the family, and they wanted to be unabashed about their ambition and what they wanted to do. So my message related very well with them, and they started really relating, and that's how Nykaa became a much bigger brand than what we were. Like, in early days, like, we got a lot of trust from our customers, but we also got that, customers really love us. We get a lot of brand love because we actually fit in with what their philosophy on life is. And I'm a living example of that. So, in that sense, they feel that, today's millennials are very authentic. So they feel that I'm saying that message with authenticity.
Yeah, no, you are. And by the way, I'm inspired just listening to it. That I didn't know that this is what you did, and you spread the message of the brand, and probably inspired many more out there. So this also links back to our earlier point we were making about how to get more women into the entrepreneurial workforce. But it's a brilliant message. So thank you so much for sharing that. Falguni, in today's world of funding euphoria, success of a startup is sometimes measured in time, which is number of years, number of months, even to become this newfangled word which everyone knows, but unicorn status. So in how many quarters, in how many years this company turn unicorn? That's the way people. Do you think the core value proposition and inherent strength of a business is getting lost somewhere in this funding frenzy?
I don't know whether to judge that, but to be honest, when I saw other companies become unicorn and we were not, I was never chasing unicorn. I wasn't trying to get my valuation up so that I could be a unicorn. But yeah, I did feel that, oh wow, this company became a unicorn in just 4 years, 5 years. It feels sexy, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think it doesn't matter. I think what matters is the long-term sustainable company that you're creating that will survive for generations. And what I was trying to build was a solid company that will survive for generations, and wanted to build a brand that outlives all of us. So I think we always believe in big sustainability, and what I mean by sustainability also is that the business has to be sustainable. If you're going to not have the right unit economic metrics, then when the capital runs out, and then if it's not a good great times, then what are you going to do? So I think we were very, very convinced that we need to build a very nice long-term sustainable business that builds brands, and the brands that are loved by consumer live in the hearts of the consumer, and hence they survive for generations.
Wow. So were you very clear about that right up front, that you want to build something, one is durable but multi-generational? Like that was something very clear even when you started up Nykaa, or it just evolved over time?
No, I started off with that. So I was a stockbroker, and as a stockbroker, I always loved brand companies, and I understood the values brands have. And when I started a retail business, the big thing in my mind is how can I transition a retail brand into a consumer brand? Because retailer consumers will move from one retail shop to another, but they won't move that easily from one brand to another. And brands live. I studied all this very early on because I was very inspired by brands and the value they create, the financial value that they create, besides the much consumer love that they create. And brands live in the minds of the consumer. So there's no, it is more than math, it is more than science, it is more than art, and it is the magic that gets created in the minds of the consumer. So it's difficult to exactly prescribe what to do for that.
Yeah, intangible but invaluable is what I always say brands are.
Summarize is better than I have, but yes.
Okay. What are these? Almost every time I meet a young entrepreneur, they're asking, tell us, of course, this is what I'm planning to do. This is what I'm planning to do. But the last question very often is, what should I avoid doing? So what are these common pitfalls which you feel in your own? And by the way, I've just loved your authenticity, to use your own word, of every answer. And you've taken, I think, a very, very, it's simplistic at one level, but it's also pretty profound otherwise. So what are these that you would tell from your journey, and also actually helping so many founders and entrepreneurs go public, because you did that for a couple of decades. You know, some big ones that entrepreneurs should avoid and really steer clear of as they start their process of building a business.
Yeah, sure. So I think what I can start with is that when I took a lot of companies public, I was really inspired by these entrepreneurs who were creating early stage value, and and most of the time investors were not believing in it. So I think very often early stage entrepreneurship is about believing in something before the whole world starts believing in it. Because once the whole world believes in it, I used to say it also that an idea should come to us, like how you built the business, also much ahead of it being well accepted, because after that you'll have Tatas, Birlas and Reliance's competition, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think of something ahead of the time, and at that time everyone is a naysayer and no one believes in it. So I think I was looking for that belief that was ahead of the time, and hence I carefully chose beauty, where I thought that in Japan and Korea, US, Europe, everywhere it was a big business, and in India it was a terrible business. And when I was starting out, everyone told me, if you want to do first, don't do e-commerce, because in 2012 even e-commerce was not a very well accepted word. No, even Flipkart had not got funding. They said,
Right.
then if you want to do e-commerce, please don't do beauty, do electronics, do fashion, but don't do beauty. So I think first thing, I think all that message means is that believe in yourself and don't listen to too many people. You can talk to them, you can have an open mind, but also understand what you believe in, and don't get swayed by everyone's ideas and advice, because you see something and someone else doesn't see. So very often when I meet an entrepreneur, I will give advice which is not right. So I always end with saying that, look, this is my view, but go with your gut.
Yeah.
And the thing is, also going with the gut is actually, if you look at, I'm a big believer in data. Even as a stockbroker, I used to believe in data and information. And if you look at a lot of information and data and you read a lot and you know a lot, then your gut feel also is almost simultaneous with database decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, they merge. There is no difference between database decision making and the gut feel. So you can call it the gut, but go with your gut. So I think I do believe that one has to be open minded and listen to a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, learn from the world. But finally, you have to have a viewpoint, which you believe in, and you are not swayed from that for successful entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So flexible in an open approach to taking in the inputs, but finally you've got to have your own core belief,
Yeah.
which you've got to go with. And I think that left brain, right brain coming together bit plays a big role, which you were alluding to. So the last 2 years have obviously been crazy in many ways. Terrible for many businesses, like mine, clearly, by the way. But at the same time, phenomenal for India's internet scene. People buying online, which is at the end of the day the real gravy or the real customer base we're all always looking for, probably doubled from 120 million to some 250 million people are saying now. So bigger than the size of America in terms of just buyers online. But the pandemic has taught us many lessons, clearly multiple lessons for life. What do you think startups must bear in mind for this long-term sustainability? You spoke about your company being this, really multi-generational company, and I find that inspiring. Uh, does everyone need to think about that very early? Or Falguni, could that be something which just evolves over time? Because initially, I think founders in their 20s, something, early 30s, may or may not be thinking about that. I don't subscribe to them thinking about cashing out early at all. But does that always need to be very clear?
No, not really. See, the thing is, you must build a business that is long term sustainable.
Yeah.
But you see, to build a fantastic business in the long run, you need to survive in the short term. So, short term is also equally important.
Yeah.
And, meeting the ends meet in the short term is very important. And I think, I think I look at it again, similar to, how it's important to do things which are important. And, yes, urgent and important should be a priority, but not just urgent. So I think in similar way, I feel that clearly your decision should be long-term oriented, but also short-term survival is very important. And if you have to adjust things in the short term, you can. So for example, during the pandemic year, we actually let go of our marginal customers, there is, India is always a tale of two markets, and you always have marginal customers that don't account for much of, they may account for very small percent, they account for large percentage of customers, smaller percentage of revenue, and even minute percent of profitability.
Yeah.
So we actually took our free shipping to 1,500 rupees, and we let that business go for survival. We also did not recruit too many new customers. I think if you look at our numbers during the year of pandemic, we kind of held our new customer acquisition, to a very small amount. And of course, since then, now we've again started it. So I think I'm one of those who believes that you must survive in the short term to thrive in the long term. And you need an eye on both, because if you also have too much short-term orientation, then suddenly you'll realize that that also is my other fear, that you suddenly realize that technologies have come and business models have come that they've taken you totally off your feet, because you haven't been prepared for the future. So in our technology-based industry, being prepared for the future is also a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. The other very big bane of entrepreneurs is how to manage investors. Now, you said earlier on, very, very smartly, you only took money from small investors, not institution, high net worth investors, and where the rights, etc., are very easy. So it's easy to manage by and large when things are going well. But at some point of time, you go to institutional investors. And then, of course, last year you had this, phenomenal IPO where you had 81x kind of subscription. From an investor's point of view, what was it that you think was about Nykaa that was always resonating well with them? Just for a minute, if we wear that lens, and what should entrepreneurs keep in mind?
I think, we have a lot of transparency towards investors, and we were sharing a lot of information with all our investors from early stage. And in fact, making them really know and understand our strategy, and sharing a lot more information beyond what was statutorily required to share with the board. Initially, a lot of our investors were our board members, and we used to share a lot with them. So I think in many ways, and even now as a listed company, we are one of the companies which is very transparent and ready to share more and more information. Of course, one has to be aware that all data needs to be understood, and you can't share data which doesn't facilitate that investor understanding, but actually confuses them. And also similarly, there is a competitive, how much competitive information to give out, So I think within the contours of all that, if you're very honest and transparent and share the information with the investors, that's what they're looking for. At least that's what we think now. We haven't had big adversity like some of the industries have had. So I don't know what that would do to us, but I think we've been in that little bit of a honeymoon zone right now, where I think, to my surprise, during the IPO, the amount of investor attention and love we got, understanding, love is a wrong word, but I think the investors really understood our business model and were ready to believe in it. So I think we were really happy about that.
Yeah, no, it was indeed. It was also, I think, just refreshing for them to see the way the business had been built out, just like you said, unit economics right from the beginning, always correct, a big eye on profitability, and then the way you managed to scale up. And I think the online offline bit also played out just beautifully on how you reached out and kind of built out the brand. Okay, just a couple of more questions before we sadly have to let you go. I think we could go on long, but I know that you're also, by the way, thank you for doing this with a bad throat. Really appreciate that. There's a conundrum very often for entrepreneurs early days. Should I bootstrap and not dilute and go with as little capital as possible and organically bring the business? Or should I, on the other side, give up chunks of equity, sometimes very large chunks of equity, but undertake a growth strategy and grow very fast so that I can take first mover advantage and various other things which come with high growth? And we all know what happens when early stage investors come in. They're pushing you towards the growth side of the business, where sometimes I found entrepreneurs themselves saying, hey, I never wanted to do that. I was pushed. And I always tell the entrepreneur, well, then you were not strong enough. As an entrepreneur, at the end of the day, you're captain of the ship. They can keep telling you what to do, but you've taken their money, now go execute. But is there a in-between path, or is it either or is it different for different businesses? Any words of wisdom there?
No, I don't know what the right answer is. I can tell you what we chose. So we clearly decided to bootstrap and grow the business more organically with limited capital. I think I used to try to judge that I should at no point have money more than next 1.5 years requirement, because to me, I wanted to own more of the company as much as I could own.
Yeah.
And hence, because I personally feel that, you give your life to the business. And at least personally, I really get inspired by serial entrepreneurs, because for me, all my energy is going to get poured so much into Nykaa that I don't know. And I think Nykaa also, today's companies also have a multi-year growth agenda. So given the fact that one was pouring all our energy, I just felt that with all the sweat and blood that goes into the company, I'm not going to be able to start a new company again. So I wanted to, definitely as a family, we wanted to own more of the company. So we really used the bootstrap approach. I think both approaches may be fine if you want to raise more. A lot of people told me raise money while you get it, and it's good to have more money by your side. That was the standard advice I used to get from very, very knowledgeable people in the finance industry. So I didn't know. I don't know, but I didn't follow that, and I don't know who's right or wrong, because I could have got stuck with not enough money and plans left halfway because I didn't have the money, which is not what you want to get stuck with. You don't want to get stuck where you run out of money and you've not reached your finishing line. But I think having what happens is that if you have less money, then you build your business frugally, and you have that hunger to reach the finishing line. If you have too much money, then I think somehow that hunger goes away. So I was very mindful of keeping the hunger, in spite of financially being in a different place. When I started the company, I used to operate out of a 900 square feet office with my daughter used to call it that our bathroom had mushrooms growing. And it was only to create that hunger to succeed. If you go to a really nice, comfortable office, where will the hunger come from, to succeed?
So true. Very well said. And I think there's a lot of merit in frugality and the way you built that business. You definitely got it right for Nykaa, but different strokes for different folks. I think also the landscape and the market and the competitive scenario sometimes plays a very big role also
Yeah.
in what you're trying to do. So as your co-alum from IIM Ahmedabad, I've got to ask you, did your MBA or other aspects of your education play a role in your success? And if so, how?
No, definitely. I have to admit that I learned a lot at IIM Ahmedabad. I really liked the case method of education, and I think we had some of the best professors from whom I learned a lot. I also got a little bit of insight into how Harvard functions when my daughter went to Harvard Business School, and I think that was also fantastic. And I really think it's great for her, and sometimes I wish I would have also gone there. But I think IIM was fantastic. I learned a lot. I think I learned the importance of more balance management, management talent, in the sense that, it was at IIM I learned to appreciate the organizational aspect of the business management, or even marketing, finance, organizational, production management systems, the holistic management. And what I can say is that coming out of IIM, I almost became a management student, where I personally get a lot of happiness out of learning more diversified aspects of management.
Right.
And clearly my success, my confidence, my ability to debate and get out of the discussion and debate all came from all the learnings that I had at IIM. And of course, I had a lot of fun while being there. So IIM will have a very special place in my heart. I also met Sanjay there.
And
So
you met your husband there.
I met my
Exactly.
husband there.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
no complaints. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'm just going to sneak in one last one. And you've mentioned your daughter twice, and I didn't realize that she's so brilliantly educated. And I know that your son is also in the business. It's pretty rare in India, and maybe it's the early days of the internet businesses in India, that we have multi-generational family working together. How does that work out? Is that, I mean, it's obviously very fulfilling and satisfying. I can see it from a parent's point of view. You would love to do that. How does it work from the kids' point of view to come in and work? And how do you manage to keep that professional balance going there?
Yeah. No, so it was never intended to be a family business. It was always like something I started. And of course, me and Sanjay have always invested together everything. So he came in as a partner, but he was busy with KKR and I was
Yeah.
building the company. I think, Advaita was very interested in the business. I started in 2012 when they finished their undergrad. And she was from early days staying in touch, and she was very motivated to join the business. So she's like my co-founder, because she is a co-founder. She came in at very early stage, pretty much in the first 9 months of the business, and was there with me, rolling up her sleeves during the most difficult periods. And of course, now she's building the fashion business, which is entirely her baby. I think Anshit was with Morgan Stanley, investment banker, 6.5 years. I always thought that he'll chase that career. But he actually it was a mistake Morgan Stanley made. They gave him a paid break for 1 month to come home. And when he came home, I had how to occupy him. So I said, why don't you shadow me for the whole month and sit in on every meeting? And he sat in on many meetings and he got very motivated by this. So while going back, he told me, I'm going to quit on September, like as soon as people come back after Labor Day. I didn't believe him because I thought he's just telling me. And once he goes there, he'll forget all about it. But sure enough, when his bosses came back after Labor Day, he quit. So, and he's also very excited. So I personally feel that it's so much fun to work with both Anchit and Advaita. They are really great professionals, very committed to my vision and Nyka's vision. And they're also very, very hardworking and intelligent and bright. So it has really given me more. It's like they've given me more wind behind my wings, because otherwise I would have always thought that, like I told you, I started when I was turning 50. So I would have had that ultimate, like, now what next? At some point, I would have to slow down. But I think this has allowed me that further flight up. And my ambition has become, our ambition together as a family has become bigger now that they are also part of the team, co-part of it.
How awesome and how fulfilling. That's really something. Touch wood. I think this is a beautiful kind of. It's not only a great story what you've built. It's truly inspirational. I get inspired. I told you that when you were, I think you'd finished your road shows for the IPO, and then you were doing almost like a detox retreat, and you checked into one of these health places, and you did that panel with Amitabh Khan. And I was saying, this is amazing what you're doing. And now, as I've been reading more about what the company has done, my very best wishes from TiEcon. Thank you for doing this, Falguni, and look forward to staying in touch.
No, thank you very much, Deep. You also inspired me in my early journey. I remember I used to chase you for calls to have conversations with you, and you were very kindly obliged. You would kindly oblige me. So I've learned from the industry. So thank you very much for that.
Wonderful. Thank you, and have a brilliant day.
Thank you.
All right.